What it is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Third Intermission podcast. We're doing this a little bit early today. In case you already haven't heard my voice, this is your boy Dave here. Of course, you can follow us on the socials at Toronto Third on Twitter, Blue Sky, and on Instagram. And you can get us wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, and our friends over at Podbean. Got the right hand of the king here, Avery in the building, coming to you live from Edmonton on this beautiful yet gray Sunday morning here in Ontario. Avery, how's it looking out there for you?
Oh, but hey, yesterday it was 28 degrees, so we're getting warm out here again, finally.
Are we talking 28 Fahrenheit or 28 Celsius, man?
Push him out. It's 28 degrees Celsius. Yo, this guy always finding an excuse to try and get those jokes off in Edmonton, eh?
Listen, okay. If I don't do this, I don't like. If I don't roast you at some point, do I really care about you at all?
Ah, no, fair enough, fair enough.
Joining us on the pod today, we actually got ourselves a special guest here coming to you live from London, Ontario, aka the most hated hockey town in all of Ontario right now. We got Andrew from Sticks in the Six. Andrew, what's going on?
What's going on, Dave? Happy to be here, guys. And Avery and I have also touched base in the past, so glad to be with you guys today.
Awesome, great to have you here. So before we dive into things, just give us a little bit about Sticks in the Six and what you guys have done over the last few years, and just like just give us a little bit, give us a lowdown on who you guys are and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this pod like right at the beginning of COVID. Just I think my wife was getting tired of listening to me talk hockey, and she's like, she told me to go find it somewhere else. So I did just that. Grabbed Peter from the Hockey Writers, and we decided to sit down and just kind of start talking some puck, and it's blown into this 5 year thing that we're doing now. We've gone through another co-host. He's now off chasing a dream in Nashville, and he's just come out with his first single. So now we've got some new outro music. He's still kind of working with us, which is great. But yeah, we when once a Leaf fan, I think always a Leaf fan. Deep down, even those Jersey burners are still Leaf fans to some extent, and that's kind of what we're looking at. We like to talk all hockey, but our focus is on our beloved Maple Leafs. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, it's a 5 year show now, and we're quickly approaching episode 200. We have a lot of fun with it, and
Okay, so sorry about that, folks. We had a little bit of an audio issue here. That's on me. My bad. All right, Andrew, you were saying real quick.
yeah, sorry, I was just mentioning with the Sticks and the Six podcast. It's we're quickly approaching episode 200. It's something that Peter and I just put together on a whim, and it's really taken flight. We've had a lot of fun with it, and it's a hockey podcast with two guys just kind of talking puck, and when it comes down to it, we have a lot of fun, and we do a lot of focusing on our beloved Maple Leafs and some league wide issues. So I know there's a ton of hockey centric podcasts out there, but it's really good time, and some of the guests we've had on over the years, it's just been it's been a hell of a ride.
That's amazing to hear. It's kind of similar to what our story is, to be honest with you. I mean, we don't have 200 episodes, at least I don't think. I mean, Avery can fact check that for me. But um, ironically enough, the same thing kind of happened with us. We had like four guys who were just trying to talk about hockey from the black perspective, and the next thing we know, we're getting like other guests on there. We're doing shows. One of our actually our, as we affectionately call her, the queen of black hockey. Our female counterpart, Marcia, actually just got us a little something with the P-Dub recently. Folks, that's a shocker for y'all. Congratulations to Marcia. Marcia going out to the last P-Dub game for the regular season and getting us a little something. So we will have a little something for y'all a little bit later during the episode. So be prepared for that. But yeah, it's been a very fun ride. Obviously we've been hoping to work with other Leaf content creators and just, be able to bridge the gap, say, hey, this is the Black perspective of things. Hey, this is the London perspective of things. We want to be able to grow a community of just Leaf Leaf lovers and not Leaf haters,
Hmm.
just people who love the game and also understand that like, hey, minorities love the game too. So we want to be able to enjoy that. And we're glad you're here rocking with us and everything. So we're very happy to have you
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely,
All
man.
right.
Happy to be here, bud.
Appreciate it. All right. So we know you don't have too much time, so let's just dive into it. For today's episode, this is a round two preview episode. So we're actually going to let Avery, Andrew, and myself break down what was the Battle of Ontario, and then of course go back to, or sorry, circle back to round two, where Toronto and Florida 2 will take place as of Monday night. Andrew, first things first, just from a personal standpoint, how are you feeling after game six? Because I know game six was Thursday.
Yeah, so I was just talking to Avery a little bit there, and I said anybody who thought that the Leafs were going to sweep Ottawa is crazy. They haven't watched the regular season. Ottawa's a great team, and really the up and coming young franchise with a solid core. They went out and got their goalie in Linus Ullmark. He was shaky to start, but you could see the inexperience in the first few games that quickly changed. And prior to the series, Peter and I made our predictions on Sticks and the Six, and both of us took Toronto in six. So when they went up 3-0, I was certainly a little surprised. I was hoping they wouldn't sweep because I don't like the idea of sitting at home for 2 weeks and waiting for your next game. I think you get out of the groove. You need to be grinding the whole time. So seeing those two games come back and of course, it being the Leafs, making sure they didn't leave. We were, it was I didn't want them to go to a game seven. Um, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous when they scored that game tying goal in game six. And there's 5.5 minutes left, and all of a sudden you're on the edge of your seat again, wondering if this is all going down the drain. So it was a roller coaster. The first round was certainly a roller coaster, but I think it was the adversity is exactly what the Leafs need moving into the second round, especially against the defending champs. And any first round series that can kind of keep you anticipating the next play. I think it's a good series, and it was good to see the Battle of Ontario again. It was good to see, there's a lot of hatred still there, and it did make me not appreciate Tim Stützle even more. I think it's crazy that an NHL player can't stay on his feet like that. So outside of that, though, I'm feeling pretty good going into round two.
Awesome. Coming from a Western perspective, Avery, I gotta ask your thoughts on how round one went for the Leafs.
You know what? A good point Andrew made again. If you watch the season, you knew Ottawa was going to be a tough out. This is a team that had great goaltending with Linus Ullmark, got a lot of production from guys like Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, a lot of young forward core that was fun to watch. But it shows to me that Maple Leafs are able to hold a team like that at bay is a good sign because we've seen before in years past the Leafs collapsed entirely, not play well with their backs against the wall, but they are able to figure it out in game six. And that's a big thing. And also, too, I've said before in this show, the fact that this team in this series got scoring from guys not named Austin Matthews, not named Mitch Marner, not named William Nylander is a big thing. I mean, heck, the series winner came from Max Pacioretty.
That was outright insane. And it's like, you know what? Hey, if it's a curse buster at this point, and I'm not saying this to be a conspiracy theorist, it's like, okay, 67 got us out of the first round. How many times have you actually heard that joke at this point? Right? So I'm gonna say this personally though, like and our group chat can actually attest for this. I was a little bit nervous, and I will be honest about that because I was kind of hoping for at least the Leafs in five, or at least some form. I was expecting some form of fight, And when Toronto came out flat in game five against Ottawa, you had to sit there and wonder, like, okay, are we really having this happen right now? Especially after the fact that it's like you wanted to do the gentlemanly thing, give them a game, sweep at home, do the gentleman sweep. But of course, two shorthanded goals and two empty netters in your own yard is kind of suspect at that point, because you're sitting there wondering, like, did I really make half a rent payment just to watch the Leafs get shut out in my own house? Like, what is this? Right? So of course, Allmark was standing on his head the whole game. You really had to wonder what was Stolarz doing that entire game as well. And then you also had to sit there and wonder, like, what happened to the core four, if not the core five? Like, they were just nowhere to be found that whole game. And it's like there was like a sense of nervousness going into game six, not only through Leafs Nation, but just through the hockey world in general, because like the hockey world was obviously looking at the Leafs like, okay, are these guys going to choke again? Or are these guys going to be like the team that they actually need to be? And of course, we saw the latter rather than the former in this situation. So I'm happy that I don't have to deal with it anymore. I mean, my beard's still going white, but it'll probably get whiter by the time the series is done. Um, who knows? But I'm just happy to finally see a second round again for like maybe the second time in 4 years, even though that's a very sad thing to say. It could be much worse. You could be the Minnesota Wild, who have lost eight straight first rounds, or who have had eight straight first round exits. You could be the Kings right now, who have lost to the same team four times, 4 years in a row. You could be the Avalanche, who have lost practically almost every single game seven that they played in, with the exception of 2001 against New Jersey. Although I feel like somebody might check me for that on Twitter. We'll see. Uh, but at this rate, we're good. We're clear. No more first round exit. I mean, I'd be happy with the second round exit. I'm lying. I'd be happy with at least the Stanley Cup Finals loss. Okay, I'm lying about that too. I'd be happy with a Stanley Cup final at this point, or a Stanley Cup championship at this point. Let's see how this goes. All right, so we're gonna break this down really quickly here. Leafs and the Panthers. Leafs and Panthers too. Of course, we all know what happened during the first time these two teams got tangled up back in 2023. Leafs had won their first series against Tampa in 19 years, and we run into the team that was basically the team of destiny over the last 2 years. Of course, Florida made the Cup final that year, only to get basically child abused by Vegas of all teams, which was absolutely insane. And then, of course, them basically denying Avery's favorite team of a Stanley Cup, even though they had them one of the most improbable comebacks in NHL history. But unfortunately, they couldn't get the job done. Going into this series, of course, Florida's lost a lot of firepower, and of course, a number of their players are coming back from suspensions or injuries as well. Of course, Aaron Ekblad coming back from a 50-game suspension with PEDs, with PEDs and everything. And of course, you also have, say, a number of other players coming back as well. Andrew, I'm going to start with this. Who is your X factor? Oh, sorry, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. 20-game suspension. Thanks, Avery. Going back to my question, Andrew, I'm going to start with this. Who is your X factor for both teams going into this series?
I think for Florida, it's got to be a guy like Sam Bennett. This is a team that they now have what they'll call three rats. I call them the three blind mice. But it's three guys that are focused more on the physical side of the game with the offensive upside. So you've got Kachuk, you've got Bennett, you've got Marchand. Marchand is kind of past that prime, but he still has some jump. Uh, we all know what Matthew Kachuk can do, and of
Mhm.
course he's gonna be a big piece in this series. But I think Sam Bennett's a guy that kind of flies under the radar a little bit during the regular season, and he comes to play every time in the playoffs. Like he was battling injuries at the end of the season. Tkachuk was battling injuries at the end of the season. Marchand was battling injuries at the end of the season. Aaron Ekblad was just suspended for another 2 games for that hit, the forearm shiver that he threw in, I believe it was game 4.
Yeah.
Um, and so I mean, a lot of things that there's a lot of unknowns right now with the Florida Panthers. How healthy is everybody? That's same conversation we have with every team when it comes to playoff time. But I think Sam Bennett's a guy that he's a gamer. When he goes out there, he's gonna look to add something physically, and then he's gonna also look to be a piece that can help offensively as well.
Mhm.
From the Toronto perspective, I said it for the first series. I think Peter's all hype on Matthew Nyes, and I agree. Matthew Nyes is a big piece of this offense.
Yeah.
I think John Tavares for me. John Tavares is a guy that can change a game, um, just based on like he's not the quickest foot anymore, but
Hmm.
the way that he can still shoot the puck and contribute offensively, he's a big piece to this. I know it's Berube's favorite term, the core four, but to what Tavares adds to this team, you've seen a lot more of that this season with him not wearing the C. He's been able to focus on getting back to his game and being a big time scorer, being a big offensive piece, averaging a point a game. Like this is a guy that you need to get going, and I think he's going to be able to do that against Florida. He feeds off of Florida sometimes, so it'll be for me. It's John Tavares and Sam Bennett.
Avery, same question to you.
When it comes to the X factor, I think I in my take, I'm gonna go for Florida. Satya Barkov. I think it's tough to deny what he can do as the best two-way forward in the NHL right now. He's gonna be very effective on both ends of the ice. He's a guy who can consistently give Florida top scoring and act almost as a deep man in his own way. So I think finding ways to neutralize Barkov is going to be a really big thing come this series. And from the Toronto side, I think it's gonna be an obvious one. It's gonna be a simple one, but it's gonna be Austin Matthews. This is a stage in which you want Matthews to again step up even more, show that he can be the guy who has a pass of being the Rocker Shard winner and finding ways to get the offense going because that offense in round 2 is gonna go right through him, I believe.
I can totally see both of those being huge X factors in the series. I think for me right now, starting with Florida, you can't overlook the obvious blight in this situation. You have to look at Matthew Tkachuk in this situation because like the sec you go from Brady to Matthew in like a span of a week, and of course, with Florida being the team that they were all season long, like Matthew Tkachuk is an actual absolute pest. But you also have to look at it from a leadership standpoint and understand that like he has been guiding this team to one of the strongest showings within the last, say, 3 years. And the fact that they have made 2 cup finals basically with under under their leadership, it has been nothing but absolutely stellar for Florida, and like that really hurts me saying it, especially considering the fact that I hate the Kachuk brothers more than anything in the world. So obviously, it's a very mind-boggling thing to even say, but at the same point in time, like you cannot overlook the fact that like his passionate play, his scoring ability, his leadership ability, and the fact that he can be an absolute piece of crap on the ice. It's like it's one of those things that Toronto cannot overlook in this series. And if they overlook it completely, like the way that Toronto just barely brushed through Brady, um, this series might end early. So I fully believe that like Matthew could be a huge X factor in this series for Florida. For the Leafs, it's it's a toss up between actually, you know what? I'm gonna go against the grain here. Marner really needs to be that guy. Um, and I really need Fishbowl Marner to actually step up without the Fishbowl in this situation because, like, you know what? Like, this is the series that he needs to either put up or shut up in this situation. Now, of course, Marner has been very beneficial not only with Toronto's playmaking but with Toronto's scoring as well, especially after the Four Nations face-off. because after beating both the Kachuk brothers in the United States and your own teammate Austin Matthews in one of the biggest hockey games in like recent memory between Canada and the United States, it's like this guy has been on a tear. Mind you, he's on a contract here right now. Like he's trying to look for a massive payday, and the best way that you can do that without having him walk is have him step up in the second round. And if he does not step up, then it's like, okay, you know what? There's the door in this situation. I feel like he could be a massive X factor as well, partially because of the fact that it's like, you know what, this guy has contributed to not only like what Toronto scored. Let's say Toronto scored like almost 30 goals within the first round series against Ottawa. He was on the ice for almost about 50% of them. And you know what? Like he's a huge contribution to the offense, not only on the power play unit but also on 5-on-5 as well. And you know what? He was a huge component as to how Toronto ended up winning the series against Ottawa. If he does not step up to where he needs to be, then like I said, he can go to Columbus. He can go to Chicago. He can go to Utah. I don't know. I don't care. At that rate, that's if he loses. Like, don't get me wrong. I have been on Marner's side since he got drafted, and I have been in love with the kid ever since. But I need him to step up, and like obviously, I do believe that he can be that player. But if he does not show up in this series, I will I will lose my mind. So that is my X factor for this series. As much as I want to be, as much as I want to not give the shit sandwich in this situation, like it's like you go with the good, go with the bad, and then you finish off with the good. Kind of want him to be that player that I need him to be. But I guess some folks might disagree with it. Who cares? It's my opinion. Really quickly, goaltending here, and I'm gonna go between you, Andrew, and you, Avery. Um, who starts?
It's got to be Stolars. We had the same conversation this week, actually just yesterday, uh, regarding Wall versus Stolars, and at the end of the day, the cup ring goes a long way.
Mhm.
It's the first time in his career he started 6 games in a row. It'll be the first time in his career he starts 7 games in a row. What he's done outside of games 4 and 5, um, I mean, he's been one of the most consistent pieces for the Leafs this season.
Mhm.
So I think the way that he communicates, we've heard about it all season long, the way he communicates on the ice with his players, and you're going to need that against Florida. The way he can handle the puck. The one issue I've had with Stolars, I think, so far in the playoffs is his rebound control.
Mhm.
It's been kind of suspect, but at the same time, like this is a big boy. This is a big boy, and you want somebody in net that can, on his knees, he's still covering, 85% of that net. And I think what he gave you in round one, you have to go back to him, knowing very well that you have Joseph Wall back there in case you need him. But at this point, you're going against his former team. And I think that gives you a little bit more of an edge. I think a guy like Stolars, he wants to win against his former club. He wants to beat his former mates. We saw the whole first round thing with Nick Cousins in the pregame and all that stuff, and we saw them in the handshake and the smile on Stolars' face when he can go up and take out some of his former teammates. I think he's driven and he wants to get that done. So for me, why would you not? Why would you not stick with what you have? I think this was the conversation going into the playoffs was, are we going to bounce back between 1A and 1B? And I think Berube's done the right thing in sticking with one guy, and it gives you consistency in net. It also gives you consistency with your players knowing who they're going up with. And that, unfortunately for Joseph Wall, that plays a huge role when you know who you're playing in front of. I think that really changes the perspective of how you approach the game. So I would say Stolars until he gives you a reason not to.
Perfect. On the flip side, Avery, who do you start with in between the pipes?
It's got to be Stolars. And similar in the vein of I believe in going with the goalie who's been getting you wins in the postseason. Similar in the vein of how Cal Pickard is number one guy right now in Edmonton. You got to go with the guy who's gotten you the wins. And for Toronto, that's Anthony Stolar's net until it isn't. So and again, and we've seen him before this year. Toronto's a solid 1-2 tandem in net with him and Wall. But
Hmm.
Stolarz right now has shown why he should be the number one guy in net. And again, like Andrew mentioned, playing against Florida, play against your last team, that's gonna be motivating. You won a cup with them last year, but now you want to beat them to get to a conference final. So I definitely go with Stolarz in round 2 here.
I fully agree with that, and I'm sorry, I should have said on the flip side, who goes in net between the who goes in net with Florida. So that's my mistake.
That's not a question. It's Sergey. That's not a question. Yes, no, that's not a question, Dave.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, really quickly, special teams. Avery, I'll let you go first. You start with Florida. Andrew, I'll let you go with Toronto.
The Florida, when it comes to the power play, that's Florida's a dynamic team that it's going to be a big thing for the Leafs to figure out how to slow them down on the man advantage on the penalty kill. Like that's one thing about teams like Florida, Edmonton, Dallas. They are so dangerous at 5 on a power play. You have to figure out how to get kills early and often, or else Paul Maurice will burn you with that unit. I find Dave.
Okay, perfect. All right, Andrew, I'll go with you. Leafs special teams.
This is the best we've seen the Leafs power play in, I want to say, the last decade when it comes to playoff hockey. The first 3 games of round one, every power play goal came within the first 10 seconds or 18 seconds of the power play. It started to die off a little bit in the latter half of that series, but the five forward unit. I wrote a piece about this for the Hockey Writers earlier in the year. It's done Berube wonders, but it's also hurt him, and we saw that later in the Ottawa series as well. A couple shorthanded goals against. That's where the focus has to be. So if they've played very disciplined hockey, and there's something Steven Lorenz said earlier in the series. He said, we're talking about being disciplined in this room, not just about taking penalties, but also not yelling at the refs. And I think that's gone a long way in terms of, I mean, I think all three of us can agree that the officiating in the NHL is extremely suspect. Whether it's regular season, it seems to have been exponentially worse come playoff time. We've seen the cross checks in Montreal, no calls. We've seen it's been horrific. But that said, they anytime you're playing a sport, you're always told don't let the referee play into the final score. So you've got to put yourself in a position where if you take that late penalty, it's not going to cost you the game. If it's a bad call, it's not going to cost you the game. The Leafs have to find a way that if they do take those penalties and they have that 5 forward unit on the ice, get it done quick, get it done as soon as you can to get that unit off. Put yourself in a position to win with those goals, but put yourself in a position where you're not fighting against a possible shorthanded goal because that hurt them in games 4 and 5,
Hmm.
and it can certainly play a role and it can change the tide of a series.
Okay. Biggest matchup between both teams. For me, it's it's a battle of the playmakers, Verhaeghe versus Marner in this situation. Uh, Andrew, I'll go with you.
I think the big question mark. So in round one, Pinto was the guy who stopped Matthews. So the big question mark is going to be who's going to be that guy for Florida. If you
Hmm.
can have a guy that's going to come in here and be able to shut down Matthews the way that Pinto did a great job in round one. But it's the game within a game. So I think Verhaeghe's a good pick. At the same time, Verhaeghe's a guy who former member of the Leafs organization. He's gonna want to stick it to them as well. Nobody
Hmm.
believed in him when he was in Toronto. They moved him in that massive one of their massive deals. It was you look back at it and it's like having this guy in the organization could have changed a few things. But regardless, if Matthews, it's Matthews against everybody, in my opinion. I think if Matthews can go out there and have big games, and we all know that there's the potential that he's been playing hurt this entire season. But if he can go out there and do what Matthews does, I think, this team could surprise a lot of people in round two.
Okay. Avery.
I'll agree with you, Dave, when it comes to the matchup. You mentioned the Verhage Marner one, and of course, mentioned beforehand, Mitch Marner. This is going to be a series which, again, this is going to be really a show me series again for Mitch Marner as someone who clearly wants to get paid, be it by the Maple Leafs or by somebody else. And I think if Marner has a good series here, this is going to help his case to potentially return to Toronto and get that bigger deal, or go somewhere else, be it somewhere else in Eastern Conference, or like you mentioned, making a move possibly out west to a team like, say, Utah HC, who could definitely use a guy like that as a veteran on their roster.
All right. Last but not least, as we know, Andrew has to get out of here shortly. Um, who's taking this series and how long is it going for? Andrew, let's start with you.
This may just be the passion, but I Peter and I disagreed on this one yesterday. But I'm going to stick with my pick. I think the Leafs take it in seven. I think they've learned a lot over the last couple of years. I know we get tired of hearing the same cliche lines when they get kicked out in the first round every year. We got to be better. We got to learn from this. Blah 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 blah. But I truly believe that the adversity in round one, going up 3-0 and losing two games, especially the 4-0 game at home, I truly believe that the Leafs are learning from this. I think having a coach like Chief behind the bench, especially when he's a guy that's going to go in that room. And we heard in round one, he went in there and he said, "You guys are a good team. Just play your game." And I think if you let them do that while still creating a little bit of structure, there's endless possibilities for this team. It's
Mhm.
going to come down to goaltending, and it's going to come down to how much time you play in your own end. If they're blocking 30 shots a game like they were against Ottawa, it could be problematic. You're going to start seeing injuries pile up. You're going to start seeing high danger opportunities for Florida. It's going to change. It's going to change the perspective of this series for them. But I think if they can play their game and they play a little bit more loose against a team that one is going to be without Ekblad for one game, but also from what I've heard from fans in Chicago, Seth Jones isn't as strong defensively as people may give him credit for. He's got a long stick. He's a big boy, but I think there is a little bit of a question mark in his defensive abilities. You've got opportunities here to create offensively, and I think that's going to play in their favor. I could see the Leafs taking it in seven.
Okay. Avery?
The big thing is going to be right there, as Andrew mentioned, the Leafs learning from lessons and actually converting on them, but also to the Florida Panthers. They have played a lot of hockey in the past 3 years. And in this modern era of hockey, it's tough for any team to make it to a cup final or have deep runs 3 years in a row, for no matter who you are, no matter if you're a Toronto, a Florida, an Edmonton, a Dallas, whoever, that catches up on you, the wear and tear catches up on you. And I do think this Leafs team has enough to get past Florida and slow them down if we do go into a long series. So I do think that we do have Toronto in seven because, like I mentioned, Florida, you play a lot of hockey, you got a lot of vets. That much wear and tear will catch up with you after 3 to 4 years of long playoff runs. I'm going to go Toronto in seven.
Okay. Um, I feel like, and this is a very weird comparison, but just bear with me for this one. If both of you are very aware of the 2019 Toronto Raptors championship run, of course, we had to deal with like in the first round, we had to deal with a whole bunch of adversity with like Kyle Lowry's shooting, Toronto's abysmal record in game ones. Of course, Toronto like just getting blown out by DJ Augustine and the Orlando Magic within like game one. And of course, all the comparisons of Toronto being a terrible team, of course, dealing with like a Nikola Vucevic at the time and what have you. Folks, I understand this is a Leafs podcast, but just bear with me for a hot second. And then, of course, like Toronto ended up winning like four straight with like say shooting from Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, Kyle Lowry finding his defensive touch, Serge Ibaka just coming out of nowhere and being the guy that we needed him to be, and of course the Raptors ending up winning in five. And then, of course, Toronto had to deal with one of their biggest rivals of the entire series in Philadelphia. And of course, that was a 7 game battle that could have gone either way. Toronto, of course, ended up winning game one. And then all of a sudden, it was just back and forth. Philly was up like 2-1, and then Toronto was up 3-2, and then Philly forced a game seven, and game seven was just an absolute crapshoot. And then, of course, Toronto winning on one of the craziest bounces in NBA history. Um, I feel like that's how this series is gonna go. Because I feel like at some point, like Toronto's gonna get hit with a punch, and then Florida's gonna get hit with a couple, and then Toronto's gonna hit back, and then Florida's gonna hit back, and then I feel like Game Seven's gonna feel like the exact same way. This feels exactly like the Toronto Philly series going into this series. Of course, you have so many X factors going into things, but of course, obviously, the one glaring difference is that Florida is the defending Stanley Cup champions. Philly didn't do shit back then. But ideally speaking, it has the same, I guess, same undertones of that entire series because it's like you had two teams that were basically battling for first in their division. Toronto and Philly were doing the exact same thing. And, it's like it's a very clear cut thing where it's like a lot of odds makers are saying Florida in seven, Leafs in seven, Florida in six. Leafs may not be able to like drag this whole thing out. That said, I'm gonna go Leafs in seven as well. I feel like, Toronto may finally have that ability to actually just take a closeout game in seven because we have a lot of demons in game sevens. And I feel like, this is going to be one of those series where it's just like, something gets exercised in this situation. Now, is there going to be like a game seven buzzer beater for the Leafs? Or a game seven overtime winner for the Leafs? I don't know. I really don't know. If that actually does happen, then it's pretty much like, okay, you know what? Raptors 6 years ago, Leafs 6 years later. Who knows? So that's kind of what I'm seeing it as at this point. If it does happen, it does happen, and if not, then I'll just eat my words in this situation. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I personally love it. I was just gonna say, like, I've said this a couple times to a few people. I'd love in game one. I'm not a big fan of changing your lineup when you're winning, but in game one, I would love to see a Revo signing. I would love to see Revo in the lineup, set the tone early, and you're going to be in a physical series. Like this team needs to set the tone. I
Hmm.
think if you go out there and in game one you start like Revo, Lorentz, and I don't know Lawton, and just give them the first shift and set the tone early. Get them a game in there. Get this team hyped up. It's all about it's the same as the power play. Get it going early. You've got home ice advantage. You got to find a way to get it done. And I think if you can take 2 games right away in Toronto, this series is going to look a lot different going back to Florida.
Avery, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. And they always say history doesn't begin until someone wins a game on the road. That's gonna be a really big thing for Toronto to get at least one W in Sunrise and find a way to bring things back to Toronto and win there. Because Florida, as much as people do like making fun of Florida or the crowd, that's actually very hostile building when it's full in Sunrise, Florida. So that's gonna be a big thing for the Leafs, finding ways to go down there and get some W's.
Okay. All right. Well, as you can probably hear church bells in the background right now, sounds like it's Andrew's time to go. But Andrew, I really want to say thank you for coming through. Let them know where you're at with your podcast. Where can we find you? How can we listen to you?
Yeah, so you can check us out on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. We're climbing the numbers on subscriptions, and it's always fun to see our faces when I mean they're ugly mugs, but I mean it's worth watching sometimes. some crazy stuff happens when we're on video. But you can check us out on anywhere you download your podcasts, like yourselves. Spotify, Apple, Amazon. We're on all of that. And if you want to hit us up on Blue Sky, X, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it now. We're on Facebook as well. So anywhere you want, just check us out. Sticks in the Six podcast. We're always looking for a good chat, and we love we do all of our shows live. So if you're ever listening and you hop on one of the channels and you want to send a comment in, we're always willing to talk about whatever's chomping at the bit in your mind to get talked about. So guys, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully next time we can do a little bit longer. I got the two young ones upstairs, so but I think you guys are doing great stuff for hockey. You guys are it's when we had Avery on the first time, it's all about sharing the love and growing the game, and you guys do a fantastic job with that. And
We appreciate that.
you mentioned Marsha as well with the PWHL, and I'm excited to hear that news, and really pumped for you guys. I think keep plugging away, and this is gonna do wonders for all of you.
Appreciate it, Andrew.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
All right. So that was Andrew from Sticks in the Six giving us a little bit of a preview for round two between our beloved Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to jump into the other three series. And of course, we're still waiting on one, but we'll dissect that very, very quickly. This is the Third Intermission podcast, and we're going to pay some bills, and we're going to come right back. Hey folks, welcome back to the Third Intermission podcast. You're here with the top two guys in the podcast right now, the right hand of the king and the king himself. Want to say thank you once again to Andrew for coming through and helping us break down the Leafs versus Panthers series, which we are very excited to go on about. Of course, game one is Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Yes, folks, 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you have to go to bed at 11 o'clock, good luck. And that's if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the Atlantic time zone, dog, you're screwed. Anyway, we got three other series we want to talk to you about. Of course, we're going to dissect Dallas and the winner of Winnipeg St. Louis. Last, actually, because we're still waiting on a winner for that. We can just breeze through that really quickly. But the other two series we want to talk about, of course, featuring our favorite hockey player of all time, Connor McDavid, as he goes toe-to-toe. He and the Edmonton Oilers go toe-to-toe with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, mind you, the Pacific Division has been on a violent tear over the last few years, especially within the playoffs. And you know what? Like these two teams are, I guess, the perennial forefront running teams that obviously everybody looks at, especially when it comes to that division. Avery, I'm going to ask you to break this whole series down because you know these two teams better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Edmonton Vegas part two. If people don't recall or might have just forgotten, Edmonton Vegas clashed for the first time in the postseason back in 2023. With the Vegas Golden Knights winning that series in 6 games. And it was one in which we saw Bruce Cassidy, in many ways, outcoach Jay Woodcroft, then head coach Jay Woodcroft, in that series. The adjustments that were needed. Also, Aiden Hill came in mid-series after Laurent Brossoit went down, and he was a big hero in Vegas' run to their first Stanley Cup in 2023. You look at Edmonton now and Vegas. Both teams have had changes when it comes to certain cogs here and there. Of course, Edmonton now Edmonton still has McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, et cetera. But they come into the series with Calvin Pickard in net over Stuart Skinner. Pickard was one of the bigger pieces when it came to saving Edmonton's bacon against the LA Kings in net. And Edmonton was able to get a lot of depth scoring in that series against the Kings. They got great production from guys like Connor Brown, like Vasily Podkolzin, like Matthias Janmark, who once again found his playoff groove for this franchise. And you look at Vegas on the other side of this team. Look at Vegas. That's a team where they have an abundance of riches when it comes to the forward core, the D core, in net. They've had a great run this year, even though Edmonton was able to get a few wins this year in the regular season. Edmonton won. They won 2 games. Edmonton beat Vegas 6-3 back in December. Edmonton beat Vegas 3-2 back in April, late in the season, a game in Paradise, Nevada. But look at the Vegas Golden Knights roster, and I mentioned the wealth of riches. This is a team, Dave, where you got Zach Whitecloud as a third pair D man. He's a top 2 D man anywhere else in this league, most likely. But he's be the bottom pairing guy on the Vegas Golden Knights. You look at the Golden Knights forwards, and it's a line. It's really Bruce Cassidy's a lot of things to play around with, because again, you've got players like, yes, you got Jack Eichel up front. You also have William Karlsson, Mark Stone, Brendan Saad, and you have Thomas Hertl, who has been a guy like Thomas Hertl can't get enough time playing in the top 6. Thomas Hertl is your on the third line. So that is a scary team in which you're rolling with. The Vegas Golden Knights have a top 9, isn't just, to scoring line checkers. That's just the top 9 forwards of the best players on that team. It's going to be tough for Edmonton to contend with that. You have to clean up a lot of things. I think the biggest in clean up is the penalty kill. We saw the Golden Knights, the Kings, have a strong power play against the Edmonton Oilers. And that's one thing that Edmonton cannot risk against Vegas Golden Knights. You can't go into a second series playing with fire on that penalty kill. That's going to be a really big thing to pay attention to in Edmonton and Vegas. And I think, too, again, we got the goaltending matchup in this series here. It's going to be Hill against Pickard, most likely. But one thing that Chris Knobloch did say about this team is that he's confident in the goaltending, in either Pickard holding strong or Skinner coming in, be it in relief or taking back over again as the starting netminder. So that's going to be a really big thing to see, is can Calvin Pickard, for a second series in a row, thrive in net for the Edmonton Oilers.
I feel like that's hugely significant for both teams. Of course, I haven't been paying attention to the series to Vegas and Edmonton as of much, but I do believe that Edmonton is say the perennial dark horse in these playoffs. Just give or take right now. Connor McDavid, of course, being the player that he is, and Leon Draisaitl being the scoring machine that he is. I really don't know how Vegas is going to step up and be able to stop these guys, considering the season series between these two teams is tied at 2 games apiece. The fact that, say, 9 points basically separated these two teams from first in the Pacific was absolutely insane. And it's just outright mind-boggling how somewhat similar these two teams are, despite their different playing styles. And it's like this. You really have to look at it as who's going to shut down who's going to pair up with who. Of course, you did mention that Vegas basically had a top 9 and a bottom 3. That's pretty much not even an understatement at this point. That's just a fact of life at this point, especially within this series. Are you going to see a duel between McDavid and Eichel? Probably at this point. Actually, you know what? I feel like a more even matchup would be, say, Eichel and Draisaitl in this situation. Looking at the lineups here really quickly, like you have say on your top line, you have Draisaitl, McDavid, and Perry, and then going against, say, Vegas's top line of Karlsson, Eichel, and Stone. That's already a battle in itself. Then you have, like, say, what is one of the biggest defensive matchups between the defense core is, like, you have Alex Pietrangelo taking on Darnell Nurse in this situation, and his pairing with Noah Hannafin, and Darnell's pairing with Evan Bouchard. I feel like that's already say toughness and veteran leadership versus youth and speed, all in that same. And it's just who has the bigger edge in that situation.
You mentioned right there that pairing of Bouchard and Nurse, and that's one thing that I've hammered for quite a bit now. I do not like that pairing. Evan Bouchard and Darnell Nurse are too similar of players. to be on the same pairing. They clash like oil and water, and we see these guys have been responsible. I mean, separate on different pairings, great players, but together they are too similar. They are two puck moving D men who want to do the same thing too much, and you'll see at times Bouchard or Nurse fly the zone too often, and you see one of them get caught on an odd man rush or a change. So no, I do think Chris Knoblauch in this series is going to have to separate those two because the Golden Knights are too good, too quick, and too clean with their play to let you escape unscathed. I mean, we saw LA capitalize a couple of times, but the Golden Knights are a step above the LA Kings in many aspects. But granted, though, I will say I did like the game of John Klingberg. He's someone who I thought a really solid game 5 and game 6 for the Oilers. But I would much rather, if you're talking about the pairings, I'd much rather give a stable presence when it comes to a defensive D-man. I'd rather see a Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak on the back end, or Kulak and Bouchard. Just give that pairing, give Darnell or Evan a stable stay-at-home D-man, someone who can stay in the zone, someone who isn't the same as the other one, to make that a stable pairing. And again, we got to see how things are going to go. If Edmonton does get past Vegas, we're going to get back Matthias Ekholm. But until then, you got to find a way to get Nurse and Bouchard onto different pairings if you're Chris Knoblauch.
Okay, so if you say, well, if you're the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, and this is a very stupid question considering you almost just answered it, what would your defensive pairings be in this situation?
Yeah, so I am gonna go. Actually, leave flip that. I'm actually gonna go. No, I'm gonna stay. Kulak Nurse. I'll throw. Maybe let's throw in Klimberg Wallman, and I am gonna see. The Bouchard one is tough. I gotta really watch game 1 for see who Bouchard works best with. But I just know for sure that Kulak and Nurse is a lot better. Let Darnell be an offensive D-man. Let Darnell be that puck mover, the guy who likes to come in on the rush. Let him play that game. Let him focus on that more or less on that pair. And let him focus on being physical. That's where Darnell and Nurse thrives the best. And same for Evan Bouchard. I mean, and granted, Evan Bouchard's D, people like to, yes, Evan Bouchard has made his mistakes this year, but it isn't as bad as people like to see. Team defense has been okay as a collective, and he's been in regular seasons one of the better D-men when it came to not allowing high danger chances. So, but yeah, in general, I feel that in general the bashing Evan Bouchard to me, I think is overblown. Not a tad, a lot, because look at the most points per game all time for D-men NHL playoff history. Number 1, it's Bobby Orr. Number 2, Evan Bouchard. All time, Dave, in points per game for a D-man in the playoffs. Orr and then Bouchard. And people still want to sit up here in this town and tell me Evan Bouchard is not a franchise D-man. Evan Bouchard, we should trade him. He's making too much money. He is second all time in points per game for a D-man in the postseason. All time. And you want to get rid of this guy. Ridiculous.
That's insane. Okay, really quickly, who takes this series and how long?
So, in a similar vein of Toronto, Florida, this is going to be a long and tough series, and I do think that yes, Edmonton is an older team. We know this. Playing this many, having these deep runs back to back does hurt you. This isn't a young team, and same for Vegas. They're also an older team as well too. But I do think Edmonton finds a way past the Golden Knights for the first time in the postseason. And I do think you do see both Skinner and Pickard in this postseason series. But I do think Edmonton finds a way to figure it out and gets past the Golden Knights. So I'm going to go Edmonton in 7.
Okay. I'm going to be that insane voice of reason here. I'm going to say Vegas in 7, only because of the fact that, like, say, Vegas is a lot stronger than, say, Edmonton has been over the last few weeks. Of course, trying to take out a very young and a very powerful Minnesota Wild team, even though Minnesota has lost essentially 8 of their last 10 first round series within the last within the last 20 years. I still feel that like Vegas was the stronger team in this situation. Now, mind you, looking at the Edmonton series, like Edmonton essentially took out a favorite in Los Angeles in Quinton Byfield and the Los Angeles Kings. Um, they really took them to the woodshed on like within those 6 games alone, and just the first period of Game 6 was just absolutely insane, considering that both teams were trading goals left, right, and center within like the first 5-10 minutes of the game.
Yeah,
Um, it was just outright crazy to see these two teams just basically tear it up, and then next thing you know, Edmonton just kind of just took off and never looked back. That said, I'd probably see the Golden Knights taking 7. I could be 100% wrong here. Who knows? One other series to talk about really quickly here is Carolina, Washington. Now, this might be the lesser of the 4 matchups that we're going to dive into, only because of the fact that the Metropolitan Division is more just a formality rather than just say something to really be excited about. I mean, the only matchup I can probably see that would actually make some sense is Ovechkin versus Sebastian Aho. But other than that, I mean, like, say, outside of goaltending, outside of special teams, and outside of just whatever, um, I really don't see this series being that appealing, and that's just me in this situation. What about you, Avery?
this isn't this. I mean, yes, you got Alex Ovechkin, you got a Carolina Hurricanes team that knocked off the Devils, but this isn't the series that I'm, locked into as much in terms of I gotta tap into the series. At the same
Hmm.
time, though, it might surprise us that you still have Sebastian Aho, Andrei Shevchenko. You still have a lot of great postseason performers
Hmm.
on these rosters here, and again, I cannot doubt a Rod Brindamore coach team. He's been a brilliant tactician behind the bench,
Hmm.
getting Carolina again back to consistent postseason runs over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And in but I am going to go in this series. I am going to say the Capitals get it done. That Capitals team has, I mean, when this season began, I wasn't sure about what the Capitals were going to be. I wasn't sure what they were going to be. I know I mentioned them being a possible dark horse, but
Hmm.
man, I don't think I saw them being one of the best teams in all the Eastern Conference. So, and Spencer Carberry, again, that's a guy who I definitely think deserves the Jack Adams Award this year for what he has done.
Yep.
So I am gonna go this year. I am gonna go um the Capitals in this series. I'm gonna go the Capitals in 6, but at that point, I'm not sure how much further Washington does go. I
Yeah.
know you've got Ovechkin. I know you got a high-powered offense, but I'm not sure if Washington is able to get back to a Cup final. It'll be nice. It'll be a fun story, but I'm not certain about in terms of how Washington goes if after they do beat Carolina in round 2.
Yeah. And like, of course, if they run into a Florida or a Toronto at that point, it's like, do they really have the energy or the legs to even get through a conference final, let alone a Stanley Cup final? Especially with the team that they have at this point. But anything can genuinely happen. Um, I'm gonna say Capitals in 5 on this one, only because of the fact that it's like, you know what, like even with the Carolina's defense and Carolina's great goaltending and Frederick Anderson, I feel like it might just be a little underwhelming compared to Washington's offense. And then of course you have the pest factor in Tom Wilson, and
Yes.
it's like the second he takes out like one of your best players in Kotkaniemi, or forgive me if I mispronounce that name because like that name is so hard to actually even pronounce. It's insane.
Yes,
Uh,
Barry Kotkaniemi.
okay, yeah, just Barry Kotkaniemi.
There you go.
Thank you. You got Jordan Martinook as well. You've got Jordan Stahl. I'm shocked that Stahl is still playing despite his age right now.
Yeah,
That
he's still hanging around.
Then, of course, you also have Taylor Hall, Seth Jarvis, Jacob Slavin on defense, Brett Burns, who deservingly like needs a playoff run. a deep playoff run after what losing out to Pittsburgh at the year San Jose made the Cup final. Um, like I feel like he deserves a little bit of a run. But who knows how that goes. But other than that, like I really don't see Carolina going past Washington in five.
Mm-hmm. You
So
know, yeah, and you're right. Carolina has some great players like Martin Hook, like Seth Jarvis, like Taylor Hall. But I do think the Capitals still find a way to get this series done. And
yeah,
you mentioned Brent Burns, and so with Marc-Andre Fleury calling it a career, Brent Burns is now the last player who in the NHL left who played his
Mhm.
first game before the 04-05 lockout.
Yeah. That's something that really is a scary thought because like half these players barely even saw anything past the lockout. And you know what? All those guys who basically played before 2004, 2005, everyone's out of the league now, and like he's the only one left. It's kind of similar to what Vince Carter was when he was basically the only player who played before like what 2005, 2006.
He was last guy from the 90s to
Yeah,
retire.
exactly. And now there's like barely anybody who's played there's actually nobody who's played in the 90s since then
No,
in the NBA.
yeah. Yeah, no, even finding a guy in NBA now whose career started before 2005. They're the elders now. They're the unks now. As we see
Yeah,
guys, we see the guys like the Kevin Durant's, the LeBron James. Those are the guys. Those are the old heads now in the league.
dude, for real. And it's like you bring up a name like Kevin Garnett, and everyone's like, "Who?" And it's like, "Are you serious?"
Wait, who said who about Kevin Garnett? Who said who about Kevin Garnett?
Like,
I
yo,
ain't
there's a number of people out there on the internet who said, "Oh, I don't know who Kevin Garnett is." Like, was he famous or some shit? And it's like, really?
all right.
Like, really? Like, y'all are young enough to understand that LeBron was a great player, but you don't know the greatest run in Celtics history?
NBA Twitter is. We talk about how. Hockey discourse on Twitter can be goofy at times, and
Yes.
NBA discourse on Twitter is in the toilet. There was some goofball who was mad at Reggie Miller's comment saying Reggie Miller was a role player. Like, all right, buddy, time to log off.
How are you mad at that? Reggie Miller was the greatest role play. Well, was one of the
He
greatest
wasn't a
shooters of all
no,
time.
he wasn't a role player. Reggie
He
was
was
a no,
never a
no.
role player.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you call him a role player? Like, he was Mr. Pacer for years and years.
Yo, this man single-handedly took out the Knicks and then found his way to the NBA Finals that same year. Like, that's crazy.
Uh, it was the idea of, I don't know, just there's a real issue I think in some sports where people don't know the history, and it kind
Yeah.
of it kind of pisses me off when I see stuff like that.
I feel like this is a topic for another episode, but I feel like the Kawhi shouldn't have left Toronto comments should be in full force at this point because after the Clippers lost back on Saturday, mm-mm, mm-mm,
Yeah, I mean, I know he
mm-mm.
want I know he wanted to go back home, but yikes, it's been a tough look for Kawhi. It's been a tough look for the Clippers. In closeout games, in game sevens,
How
as
do
a
you
team.
like? Do you think that's bad? Like the Clippers flew out like 125 fans from their wall section in the Intuit Dome to
Mhm.
Game 7 just to watch them get clapped. Like, imagine spending all of that money just to watch your team lose and catch a flight to Denver just to watch your team lose.
Yikes! Yikes!
Um,
That. Oh man, we
oh
should
boy.
we should wrap things up here, Dave. But I do want to mention, you mentioned earlier the PWHL. Marsha was actually down there at the last Scepter's home game,
Yep.
credentialed. So those of you who heard that, yes, the Third Intermission is now a credentialed outlet to cover the PWHL. Big ups to Marsha getting press pass credentials. So we'll be in there more hopefully during the postseason and next season with some more PW content. And earlier season ended. The final four teams, your playoff teams this year are
Mhm.
Montreal. Montreal clinched first place. Toronto, Ottawa, Minnesota, defending champions in fourth, and Boston and New York are the eliminated teams. The New York Sirens again, another tough year two of the league, but
Yep.
yeah, no. So and then we'll find out. We'll find out who Montreal will select as their first round opponent. I know I've seen a few people saying that they should take Ottawa in the first round matchup, but we'll definitely see. We'll definitely see where the Victoire go in round one of the postseason here.
And hopefully Toronto can actually bounce back from that playoff showing that they had last year, losing to Minnesota in 5 games in a reverse sweep, with Minnesota being en route to their winning the is it the Waiter Cup or the Walter Cup?
Walter Cup.
Yeah, winning the Walter Cup for the first time in league history. So that's going to be extremely significant. Last but not least, of course, we do have to touch upon the Dallas and the winner of Winnipeg St. Louis. Of course, the Mikko Rantanen show has basically gotten its second season right now, or no, it's gotten its second limited release right now. And of course, we're just waiting on where the second spot is going to be. We know at the time of this recording, Winnipeg and St. Louis have to play Game 7. Mark Scheifele is out for the Jets. So really quickly, Avery, who do you think is winning? Who do you think is winning Game 7 only to lose to Dallas in the second round?
Man, the Winnipeg Jets have had to show me something for a minute because, yes, they do it too often where they come out of the gates, guns a blazing, they're a 100-point team, they look good, but they can't win a postseason series or they stumble in the second round. So, and then they got to do it without Mark Scheifele at the time of this taping. So hopefully they can prove me wrong. I know we saw the last game where people were openly considering, hey, it might be time to play Eric Comrie in net. First of all, no, I understand that Connor Hellebuyck has had a tough run this postseason, but you gotta have some more faith in your Vezina. You got some more faith in your Vezina-winning goaltender. I mean, heck, Darcy Kemper didn't have a great series against the Kings, but you didn't see Jim Hiller pulling Kemper. He stood by his goaltender, who is also a Vezina nominee. The Winnipeg Jets are not gonna pull Hellebuyck for Eric Comrie. You're not gonna start Comrie in Game 7. That would be absurd to even consider. But the Winnipeg Jets are gonna have to find a way to start off on the right foot, because if you go down to St. Louis, you lose that series to the Blues, which you should have had in the bag. There's going to be some hard questions to be asked for that Jets franchise going forward next year. Yep. That's a team in which you will definitively be shown, if you can't win this series against the Blues, a team that should not have been getting back into the series, you've shown me and to the world and to everybody else that this core cannot get it done.
Nope.
So I'm gonna say the Jets, even without Scheifele, do find a way to get a tough. I'll say a 3-2 win over St. Louis. But going into a series against the Dallas Stars, no. Again, Dallas is too much, too good, too composed. Again, you got Rantanen, Sagan, Robertson, Hintz, and Andre Net. That's a really good Dallas Stars team. If it is Dallas and Winnipeg, I'll give them Dallas in 6. And if it's Dallas against St. Louis, I mean, great stuff from St. Louis, great effort, great showing, but the Blues are not there yet. So if it is Dallas and St. Louis, Dallas in 5.
I can agree with that. I might shorten it a little bit. Probably say if it's Dallas and Winnipeg, Dallas in 5, Dallas and St. Louis, Dallas in 4. At that rate, because it's like I don't think like Jordan Binnington has enough left in the tank to take out a very strong Dallas Stars team. And then of course, even if Winnipeg does win, like obviously they're more than likely going to get a win at home, but I feel like that's pretty much it. All right, so we want to end off the episode on a positive note. Congratulations to Mitch Marner and his wife Stephanie, who are giving birth today. So
congrats to the Marners. That's great news to hear.
Yeah, so I take back all of my negative Marner comments at this point. If he goes full Fred VanVleet mode, I swear to God. Like I will buy his jersey and I will like literally praise this man the second I see him on the Cup parade. So anyways, once again, just want to say thank you to Andrew for coming through on the episode. We will have that recap for you in regards to the P-Dub later on. Of course, shout out to Marsha for getting those credentials for us. That's massively huge. Also want to say thank you to the right hand of the king himself, Avery, for coming through on this very abbreviated episode today. And I want to thank you, the listener, for letting us grace the space in between your head top. We will be back again next week as we will be reviewing the playoffs. We will also be reviewing the OHL final, the QMJHL final, and the WHL final en route to the Memorial Cup in Rimouski. Other than that, we're not going to touch the AHL because the AHL is just a giant maze of nonsense, and you know what, we're done with that. Considering the fact that the owner wants to go with night with the word night every 5 minutes, so may not touch that.
Hey, we still should though. We should, even though Davis set up with Bill Foley's naming scheme for all his pro sports teams.
Either way. Anyways, folks, that's it for this episode. Once again, thank you for letting us thank you for spending some time with us. We'll be back next week. Until next time, drink your water and mind your business.
Oh, hang on, Dave. One second. I remember. Third Intermission Live goes down May 27th at the STACKT Market.
Yes.
Tickets will get your tickets. They're in our show bio. They'll be in this episode description bio. Hey, make sure you come on down. You can see Dave, me. We got to have some fun guests, prizes. And hey, make sure you heckle upon Dave on the show. Make sure you heckle that man.
Stop this. Listen, you heckle me if somebody's catching a right hand and a left hand. You know, equal rights, equal lefts. Anyways, have a good night.